There's obviously elephants in the room here, slash dogs. But as a whole, I just want the comment section to just like come in with respect. Cam and I both know the judges. We both know a lot of the riders. I mean, one of them happens to be your brother. Like, we are here. I'm just sitting observing, say, the comment section, and you shouldn't always read all the comments. But the internet certainly has voiced, I think, what they feel Rampage is, what they feel it's going towards. For you, how do you define Rampage? And is it at the point we should like redefine it and make sure everyone's really aware what it is, or is that like trying to stop AI? Like it's just evolving and we can't put it back in the box.
Right. I mean,
And you're allowed to have like your subjective opinions. And I know you work for the organization and you're in the booth,
no, no, no,
so
none of
like
that
you
bullshit. Like,
you okay.
yeah, none of that bullshit. I honestly think that line choice is a huge one. Amplitude is a huge one. I think maybe this year they weren't they weren't treated as huge as they should be as categories that are important. And I haven't dug into all the comments, and so I'm sure there's a big variety of a bunch of things being said out there, but I was surprised when Brandon went into the lead. I think that the way he rode that line was, God, it was amazing for sure. But
Yeah.
the line itself wasn't as gnarly as a lot of the lines out there. And I think if you're going to win with a line that isn't the gnarliest, well, then yeah, you're going to have to do some amazing stuff. Apparently, in the judges' eyes, he did stuff that was amazing enough to where it overshadowed bigger features with tricks or really unique features. Um, it is a tough one, but I will say that I was surprised when he went into the lead.
Yeah, I mean, well said. Like you say, you have invested interest, but I was also a bit surprised, and he almost seemed surprised. Like we're just speaking about what we see. We're allowed some opinions here. He did seem surprised. He is phenomenal. He's won the event 4 times prior, now 5. Like he is arguably the goat of freeride, but freeride as well as slopestyle. Not just slopestyle. Like he has done so much for the sport. And he also seemed a little surprised. And he mentioned he didn't build and go down like the biggest features, but he had that gnarly section where he had to land like on a lily pad and then go again. Like he said, he knew the consequence of that, and it was either perfect or he's having like a biggest crash of his life probably. So he was risking a hell of a lot, which people maybe couldn't see either. So there was that. So yeah, so that was super interesting, and it was amazing to see him like go up there and say, I'm doing this for my dig team. I'm doing this for myself. Like I didn't want to go out with making a mistake on one of my smaller tricks. So I think fair to you. I was also a little bit surprised, and that was maybe the tough thing is the communication that came away from the judging was amplitude, and then there was a bit of contradiction, which obviously fuels the flame for the comments and fuels the internet. And even
For
for me,
sure.
I'm like, in years prior, amplitude was scored very heavily, as in high. And then this year, you're kind of contradicting yourself.
I think
Like
so too. Yeah.
in
I
years
mean,
past, like Tom would have won with the like world's first craziest thing, even though, yes, you could argue that there were little bits in his run that he could have tidied up or done. But it's like, what are we there at Rampage for? Like
for
years
sure.
past, one huge flip won the event, and everyone wasn't mad about that. So yeah, they've got a horrible, tough job, but the communication, there was contradictions, and I think the format of judging maybe needs to be relooked at as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I agree that it's just so oversaid that it's a hard job. But like, I think what you're pointing out as well, and I agree with it, is let's avoid contradictions then, because we got to know, like, okay, what are we here trying to accomplish? And if one year, um, big huge sends are rewarded, and the next year super technical and like perfect spotless riding on smaller features with insane tricks is rewarded. What is the message, and how do the riders prepare, and how does a rider like Tom swing for the fences and think he has a winning run and then be surprised afterward? I want to circle back to Brandon as well. I would say that he is such a competitor. Just look at anything he's decided he wanted to compete in, and he wins. He dominates. He's that, but he's such a fan of the game. And so yeah, we're all just like from the bleachers interpreting his reaction. So there's no way to really know what's going on inside his head. But I genuinely think that he was just a big fan of all the stuff that had gone down that day. And he's such
Yeah.
a freaking hard worker as well. And I believe he's also a loyal friend. And so, his dudes busted their ass to make that line, and he busted his ass to make that line. And he's like, I want to get my run. And he chose a run with stuff that he would be proud of, stuff that would push him. He even said the favorite part of his run was that sea crab Indian air over that wild hip, which, wasn't the heaviest banger in the run, but it was just like he's an artist as well. And that was the part that he was most stoked about. And he said, oh, because it felt good. So he's out there, obviously as a competitor, a guy who's won 5 joyrides and now 5 rampages, but he's out there to be an artist as well. And all we can do is interpret what his reaction says about his thoughts. But then we can go back to previous years, see how the event was judged, and then have our opinions of whether or not there's consistency with what the judges are telling us based on where they're ranking these runs.
Yeah, yeah, well said. He is an artist. He's super humble as well for how amazing he is on a bike, and a great human. Yeah, so exactly. We're interpreting what we've seen in the past, what they've judged in the past, what they're saying on site. And then, yeah, I think consistency, the riders deserve that. And they deserve no contradictions, to the point that define Rampage then, or define your judging scale. Like, put it out there then.
Yeah.
If
I mean,
it is evolving, the sport's evolving, then you almost need to communicate that. Because like you say, if Bass is like, okay, this has been rewarded in the past. I mean, Tom. Excuse me, Tom. Referencing your brother. He's an incredible bike rider in his own right, but a different style bike rider. He's like, okay, well, this is one in the past, so I'm going to lay my life on the line here for 100 grand, as well as like accolades, and yes, do it for myself. It's a career changing thing. Like if you win Rampage, and then, yeah, he wasn't quite judged for it. And I'm not taking away anything of the rider that's above him. I would never do that.
right.
I can't ride those obstacles. I never have. But yeah, I think it's fair. We're able to comment like, this is what happened in the past. This is what's happening this year. It's like, guys, come on.
I've got a thought. Yeah.
Go for it.
I've got a thought experiment for it. So I'm trying to remember. And now with Emil not in the event this year, I didn't do a ton of prep and research him, because as you know, that's what we do, right? We research everything somebody's up to, what they did the previous year. But now I'm wishing I was super sharp on what he did last year. But as a thought experiment, if I remember correctly, he had an issue in his last run. And if I remember correctly, he truck driver to drop. He oppo whipped a cliff right into a regular tail up off of a cliff, into a really clean 3 variation off of a lip step down. And I think he had an issue. Yeah, there it is. I see it now. He had an issue on the very last hip. It was like an overspin 450, landed, sunk in, and flipped over. So if you are Tom and you're going, okay, well, last year, Zink's run won. Tom's riding style is very much in the same vein as Cameron Zink. So he's taking the information he was giving from the previous year, going, all right, that's what the judges want. I'm going to do that. I'm going to win. What's gnarlier than a backflip off of a huge step down? A front flip. Cool, I'll do that. And then I'll flat flip off of a huge drop. And now I've got a winning run based on what research and history has shown. So if now what we're seeing is true, and we had the results we had this year with Brandon doing an insanely technical slopestyle run with cleanliness to the 10th degree. If Emil landed his run last year, would he have beat Zink? Is that but we just don't know that because he didn't get to the bottom. What they're telling us about this year's results makes us think that if they are consistent, maybe Emil would have been way higher than we would have thought last year with his run.
Whoa. Yeah. That
Whoa.
was insane. That was insane going through your head and remembering Emil's run. That's some gnarly stuff.
It's all in there
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, no, it always is. You just gotta drag it out. Yeah, but I'm with that thought experiment. I feel like we're losing Rampage. Like,
Right.
why does Carl Straight have a single crown fork on his bike? Is that because of the bike sponsor, or because he wanted to
Nope.
innovate and do a tail? He wanted to do a tail whip in
I
his run.
never thought I'd see Kyle with a single crown at Rampage.
Yeah,
Never.
no,
Never.
he's just like the golden boy of Rampage and freaking winning the thing when he's 13. It's like we have slopestyle. This is also what it's like. You have the core audience and the mainstream audience wanting Rampage. Like you would think it stays in the realm of how it started within reason, right?
And you can be
Okay.
Rampage with a single crown. Like you can be.
Yeah,
There's
fair
nothing
enough.
saying that you can't have like the steepest, gnarliest shoot. This venue didn't really offer that up as much. Riders like Luke and Clemens were going for that at the top, and Brendan going for that, having some real steep shoots exposure. There wasn't as many shoots at this venue, and it's a lot of tricks, hammers. So as opposed to some venues, if you think about like those shelf layers that offer up those big senders, this venue had, in a lot of cases, two of those. So a lot of riders were taking off of those massive shelves 2 times in their runs. There's a lot of trick cliffs. There's a lot of trick jumps, but it is also one of the steepest venues. But let's just say there is a venue that offers up a big, gnarly gut shoot from the top, where then you can still have two gigantic sender cliff bands with 40 to 50 point-to-point step downs, and a a jump section, like a mini golf trick jump section, flattened out before the finish line. There is a world where you get somebody on a single crown doing everything: the gnarliest shoot, the gnarliest cliff trick, and the gnarliest technical lily pad trick, and the gnarliest jump trick. There is a world where a single crown wins Rampage with being like what you're kind of referring to as like what we know Rampage to be. There is a world where that is the case. I don't think by just putting a single crown on your bike and being down to do tailwhips and bar spins, you're any less Rampage. But I was surprised to see Kyle on a single crown. He had two identical bikes, one of them with a dual crown, one of them with a single crown. And he chose the single crown because there was a spot on the course where he's like, I'm guessing, I'm just like speaking for him right now, but I imagine he's like, a tail up on this is going to be way better than a Superman on this. It's going to score way higher. And if he doesn't feel like he's compromising his abilities on the bike by using that single crown fork, because single crown forks these days are so much more capable than they used to be, if there's no compromise, then a guy like Kyle, who is super good at tail ups, why not?
Yeah, well, there you go. That's why you are the expert on this podcast, on this topic. That was so well said. The venue does dictate some of the riding styles and what people focus on. And there you go, bringing two bikes, not giving up big mountain, but throwing in a tail whip, like the way you explain it. Okay, I can understand why you would do a tail whip there. You'd be a numbnuts to not understand that would probably score higher than a Superman or something else he would do with his other bike. Yeah, that's interesting. And then the venue dictates it. All right. So later on, we must wrap up with like, where do we go from now? But the dog in the room, the elephant in the room, like, yes, understand he's fan favorite, has been for a while. His dig team with their vlogs, it's fun, it's cool, gets the internet going. As devil's advocate, Rampage surely is also about creativity, having a one unique line where no one really shares anything. Like you've built the whole thing. Does he get scored down because that canyon was used the year before and it's not as exciting? Because like other than that, I'm trying to find reasons to score down Brendan when he gave us Rampage. He kind of why we tune in. That's unique. That's features that no one else would probably want to ride. Yes, other riders could. I'm not downplaying other riders' skill sets. But I saw some riders peeking down Geordie's chute and maybe wouldn't want to have a go. He's so technically gifted that if I hear he makes it look easy and that's a bad thing, like, no, you
No.
can't say that on live TV. That's like saying Semenuk makes it look easy. That's why you say things look easy when the score is so high and you're like, but that looked so easy. That's to defend why the score is so high.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit lost there. I just
I'm
am.
with you on that for sure. And my role in the event in the booth is to look at what's being done and imagine why the judges did their thing. A lot of people get it mixed up. They talk to me as if I'm a judge, like, so you're a judge. What do you think? I'm like, I'm not a judge,
No, you
and I
meant
would
to
never
give your opinion, even if
I
it's
would never
against the judging.
yeah, I would never be a judge. That's just where I stand on that. But yeah, I do have opinions and I can give my opinions. I think, people were bummed last year when Brendan got fourth as well. And in that scenario, you're like, okay, he got fourth because this, and this happened. And people, were sending it big tricks off of huge cliffs. Where did he end up this year? I almost want to pull up
It's
the
11th.
results. 11th? I thought it was 9th. He
Like,
ended up in 11th?
no, it's
So, all right, are you
11th,
looking at it?
dude.
Can you tell me who was ahead of
Yeah.
him? Maybe I'll just bring it up too.
No, I've got it. It's like, we have to talk about this. Like, are you telling me he got 11th? You can't tell me he got 11th with that run. Oh, and just
Exactly.
in the
So
comment section, referring to his previous run at that site, getting a higher score, scores to me are placeholders. We're talking 11th and last time
Oh,
he got
yeah.
4th. Like 76 versus the last time he got 86, it's very relevant. They're unfortunately just a way to placehold positions. That's kind of what judges have told me anyway.
For sure.
So he's got 11th behind Carl Strait, Ethan Nell, Adolf, Carson, Thomas. I mean, dude, these runs started getting heavy. Don't get me wrong. Like, everyone that's listening, not taking away. There was more depth, more clean runs this year than ever before. Would you say that's a fair comment?
For sure. And I just brought up the results too because I do this every year. I get home and for the next few days, I kind of just digest everything and I come up with my my final takes on it because I have my initial opinions as we all do, but I think it takes a few days to really have a final evolved decision on what I really think and that I can defend with words. And what I always do, and it's kind of cool that we're doing it right now because you decided you wanted to do this podcast so early, which is sick.
Let's do it live.
This is my process. I bring up these results, and wherever there's contention in the comments, I look at that person, I adjust the color on my monitor first, and then I look at who was ahead of him. So Brendan, I don't care about the numbers, like you say. I don't look at that one bit. I look at Kyle beat him, Ethan beat him, Adolf beat him, Carson beat him, Janon beat him. So first, let's just talk about my thoughts on Brendan's run. I think it's important to note when somebody is building their line earlier in the week, how unlikely their things are to work or like how impressed you are that they're biting them off. And Brendan always has that. He's always got something you're like, oh, God, that's going to be a lot of work. So things like jumping up onto the rock, that's creative, it's unique, and that's what everybody loves. I feel like his run, it appeals to people who ride bikes the most because it is unique, it's creative. We love, variety in our riding, and it appeals to us because we're like, that's something that makes me want to go ride. If he hasn't flipped off of a huge cliff or threed off of a huge cliff, well, just objectively speaking for Rampage, that's obviously really scary to do. But flow, interpretation of the mountain, and overall impression are categories, and those are categories that he fills super well. So Geordie's drop, that thing looks so sketchy at the beginning of the week, and you're like, yeah, who wants a piece of that? Obviously, you like build super hard and make it less sketchy, but still, that's hard work. And in the context of trying to come up with a well-rounded run. He's got a canyon gap that he flipped, so that's heavy.
Sketchy, and
Probably,
it's sketchy,
yeah,
right? Like it's technical and big enough.
for sure. Small margin for error. Small margin
Yeah.
for error. I think if you're trying to figure out something that he's lacking, it's probably like one of those big shelf-to-shelf senders. But I don't think he'd be playing toward his strengths by finding one of those big shelf-to-shelf senders. People are threeing off of those. People are flat flipping off of one of those. So it would be not the best decision for him to go that way. He's not going to do better by going and doing that because he's not going to flat flip off of it. He's not going to three drop off of it. With him getting fourth place last year, I don't have those results up right now. I feel like it would be sick for him to get a podium one of these years. I know that's what everybody wants, but there's so many people flipping off of huge cliffs and threeing off of huge cliffs with smooth runs that are also well-rounded that he just hasn't cracked into that podium spot. It's a tough pill to swallow. It sticks in my throat too, everybody at home, for that to be 11th. And should he have maybe beat Kyle? Kyle's big blunder in his run is that tail up, but it was also kind of one of the coolest parts in his run where he, tried the tail up in a consequential spot. He got his feet back on the pedals. Do you score that as a blunder or do you score that as a save? Off of the big shelf-to-shelf drop, he's doing a suicide no-hander, which isn't a big trick on that, right? Didn't he? So did he suicide the flat drop after the tail up, or did he suicide Price is Right? Do you remember?
I don't remember, so I can't comment on that. I guess the contradictions are coming out because if Tom didn't have the cleanest full run or didn't have enough tricks in other places, then Kyle Straight objectively blundered the tail whip, so it wasn't as clean as it could have been.
Right.
So that's kind of a challenge to see that score where it is.
I guess without rambling on and on, I also love watching Brendan ride. I also feel in the beginning of the week that he's bit off a lot, and these are going to be gnarly builds. I think everybody loves the story, and and loves the relatability of his riding, even though nobody would do it or could do it the way that he does it. I think what it comes down to is some of the riders above him, like Adolf, flipping Price is Right. All right, well, that's something on par with what won the year before. Carson, flipping technical step downs, maybe not that much size on his upper step down flip, but unique line choice in the same way as Brendan has unique line choice. Three and off the drop, almost throwing it away in 415 and getting mousetrapped. Now when we're getting into comparing Brendan's run to Carson's run, you're like, okay, is anybody out there going to say, oh, Brendan got robbed because Carson beat him? There's a heavy argument that Carson should have beat him. He's doing gnarly stuff, and he's linking it together with aggression and fluidity. So I know it's pretty unanimous in the comments that Brendan got robbed. There's probably a couple arguments where he should have been higher up, but people were really sending, and in some of these cases, it makes sense that people beat Brendan, regardless of how many people there are in the world out there saying that Brendan should have beat a lot of those people. And me saying that doesn't mean that I don't agree with a lot of you that is one of the most fun runs to watch, and nobody else would do it the way he did it. And to ride down that chute if you look at that chute that he rode, these kind of carving right-hander across, when you go up there and look at it, you're like, where's Brendan going? He hasn't finished his line yet. But he just mashes through it. That deserves a lot of cred on the judges' scorecard as well. But how do you weight that with people who lean back off of gigantic step down features and spun off of gigantic step down features? Is that not Rampage 2? Spinning off a huge cliff or flipping off a huge cliff? Is that not Rampage 2? It is, right?
It 100% is. That's why I like your process of coming back and rewatching the runs and then trying to rank them. And that's maybe where it's unfortunately, you got to give the judges more time. His score came in so quickly because they
Let's
just
talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
How quickly did it come in?
Okay. I have. Did you see?
Yes, you have it. Let's do this.
Do you have Ewan's? I have to give.
Ewan.
Ewan.
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
I saw it.
Not to be a conspiracy theorist. So go check Action Sports Medical. He was the doctor for Crankworks. It only took 2 minutes 54 seconds from crossing the line to scores going on screen. That's Brendan. My quick sample of 6 other run one judging times returned an average closer to 5 minutes. The next closest was a little over 4. It seems just a bit arbitrary. If you're a proper nerd, and I can complete the data set and publish later when I do a rewatch. So it's just fun to ramble on about it. What you've just done was quite interesting. You're like, yeah, I might go ahead of that one. Okay, cool. Maybe not. Maybe go ahead of that one. Okay, I can nitpick that run. Then I got to Carson. Oh, we're going to spend way longer than we have on this podcast. Maybe at the Carson. Maybe it's
Right.
at the Kurt Sorgi.
And
Maybe
then
it's
the
not.
next is Janon, who
Yeah.
had a really steep technical drop with a wild run out that had won the event in the past, and a big 3 drop and a front flip. So like a line that scores high on its own with some heavy moves that would score high on their own. Brendan's line it has to score well in the creativity, use of mountain, and execution category. And then when you start measuring things, it probably goes like, oh man, he's gonna have to like really ride it fast to be able to make up for that, or he's gonna have to do a couple tricks to make up for that. And he did. He rode it fast, except for the parts that are mandatory to like set up for, and so that's why people are pissed. And
Yeah.
So
And we understand why. We're agreeing. Like, we're also pissed. You've just got to also get some of it objectively. He's underjudged. I think that's even almost fact. Not just the feelings, not just the comments. I think I'm happy to say he was underjudged. I'll have the beer with the guys I know well from the judging tower. It's no disrespect. You can get things wrong. It's a judged event. The other thing I don't know if...
Well, biggest drop on his line is 24 feet vert. So, okay, put that on the scale, the balancing scale. 24
of
feet
like
vert.
amplitude.
Not that big. Can we all agree that that's not that big? If you consider that Brandon did an opposite tail up off of a 26-foot drop, which is also not that big, but it's on a lily pad and it's an opposite tail up, meaning he has to land with his feet perfect and then get off the ground again. So if we're just comparing those two, we're saying that if it's in the 24 to 26 foot range and you want to score high on it, you might need to, in 2024, do something as mega as an opposite tail whip. But then fill it up with the fact that this is a really unique feature, a rock that you're now jumping up onto. You have to stop on, and if you fall off the left side, it's really going to give you a shitty day. Okay, well, they start leveling out a little bit like that. And then the canyon, how far is the canyon? I wish I knew that off the top of my head. It's probably like 45 feet.
Yeah, I think.
But he flipped it.
If not longer. I think the
50?
the thing that hurt him is he did it last year. I mean, when the event was there, but prior. If that was a new build and a new exciting canyon.
Well, then also Ethan flipped.
I'm not saying it should be like that, but it just seems like the new big canyon, which was huge, which we need to give credit to your brother and Tom Eisted. That obviously is going to get the judges going because it was bigger. It's the biggest step down canyon vibe, and the run out seemed like a roll of the dice if it was going to work.
In Rampage,
you could do the canyon. You could do the canyon perfect, and you might not ride that one out. It seemed.
Yeah, in Rampage, if you're going to straight air something, then it's got to be something like that. That is not only big, but has a mandatory requirement of insane bike skill to ride out the landing. So I'm going to circle back real quick. We're going to come back to my brother and Tom's step down canyon gap. But the timing thing, I want Ewan to go and crunch the numbers on that because, and I want to open up the rule book because I think that the judges are given 3 minutes to put the score in. Okay, the judges are given 3 minutes to put their score in. So if a couple of the things that Ewan said are correct, well, if the judges took 2 minutes and 54 seconds to put their score in, they were 6 minutes away from going over limit. So if that's correct, that's okay. But if it's also correct that the judges took 5 minutes on somebody else, then that's not okay. So we got to go and find out if both of those statements are correct. We got to fact check these, and it sounds like Ewan is down to fact check. So let's fact check him as well.